2:30 in the morning, banging at the door, bang, bang, bang. And I go to the door, bang, the door comes down. The LAPD, sheriffs, county sheriffs, with their weapons drawn, come right in, with their weapons pointed at my head.
He grabbed me, threw me into a car, pulled his gun, handcuffed me, and I asked, what am I being arrested for? And they wouldn't tell me. You know, so the next thing I knew, I was downtown in the Glass House.
They put the cuffs on me, and they said, you know, we're gonna take him off. They took him off again, and we're gonna give you 10 steps that you can make a run for it. I knew what they wanted to do. And I said, ah, cabrón, I said to myself, this is really serious business, you know. And I was scared for my life. And all I can remember thinking was my children, you know, my 2 children, what's gonna happen to them after they kill me? And I put my hands back again. You better cuff me and take me in.
13 Chicano leaders involved in the walkouts were arrested and indicted on conspiracy charges. One of them was Sal Castro. If convicted, each defendant faced 66 years in prison.
You know, in reality, it's not us that are indicted. It's not us that are up for conspiracy. Because in the long run, the indictment will be on the Board of Education. The convictions will be on the individual members of the Board of Education, principals, vice principals, and counselors who've been completely negligent of their jobs for years and years and years. And it's not only an indictment of the Los Angeles schools, but of all the schools in the Southwest, where Chicanos have gone to for years, and where the schools have failed miserably in teaching them. They will be indicted, and they will be convicted. And in the long run, our kids will win, the Mexican will win, the United States will win. All of us ganaremos. Gracias.
When we were told what we were arrested for, we were shocked. Because in particular, they created a felony indictment. Disrupting a public school was only a misdemeanor. But the conspiracy to commit a misdemeanor was a felony.
The East LA 13 was the first political trial of the Chicano movement. All of a sudden now, we had a real problem at hand, and we had some very, very good, dedicated people that were going to be given a terrible time in the courts and possibly a criminal record for trying to make the city and the state do its job better.
I think that the community recognized that that arrest was designed to stop this movement. And so we knew that we had to come to their defense. It was just another thing they were throwing at us that we had to surmount.
The reason for the interest of the American Civil Liberties Union in this case is that the indictment charges no more than acts of urging others, for instance, to engage in a boycott of the schools. And in our view, such urging is fully protected by the First Amendment, and the prosecution violates the Constitution.
The entire conduct of these proceedings has been political harassment. It's an outright political attack on the entire Mexican-American community, directly and indirectly on all of the rest of us, because our civil rights are involved too. The demonstration is a poor man's printing press, and his right to use it has got to be as inviolate as the rich man's right to print his newspaper, or else our talk about free speech is just a mockery.
Police harassment or harassment is not new to the Bound Berets. It seems that Chief Retton and the Los Angeles Police Department have mistook community sentiment.
The LA 13 were released on bail on Monday, June 3rd, 1968. But their release was overshadowed by the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy 2 days later. The Chicano movement was suddenly on the defensive against the police and even the FBI.
the day that we were at Lincoln High School for the first blowout, there were guys with suits on, with cameras, taking our pictures. It was part of, I learned later on, part of the FBI counterintelligence program, or COINTELPRO, that had been created to deal with the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. And documents that I got also showed the infiltration of UMAS and Chicano student organizations.
It changed the political landscape of the movement, and it changed my life, because instead of pushing for social justice, we had to completely reverse into defending ourselves, so that the political struggle became a struggle to keep some of its own leadership out of jail. And I remember, just beginning to have this sense that I was being watched. And people started talking about it. We started talking about provocateurs and infiltrators. And certainly after these arrests, everyone was paranoid.
The Brown Berets were a special target.
The LAPD at that time was doing surveillance. They were taking a lot of photographs, and we didn't realize this till way later on when we were arrested. We felt it was an attempt to try to stop the movement, the growing movement. And little did we know that the Berets by then had already been infiltrated by the sheriffs and the LAPD.
One of the walkout leaders who said he was from Wilson High School turned out to be an LAPD.
Everyone was suspect. And with good reason. It turned out that a significant number of the people in these various organizations were police officers or informants. Many of them were actually the people who were proposing violent actions.
The officials were keeping tabs on certain individuals, which were then being referred to the FBI on subversive activities, in which I was one of those people who was listed as one of the 100 most subversive individuals in the United States in 1970.
What I started to see was a series of arrests and threats against me personally and other Berets. You guys are troublemakers, you're making our people look bad, and we're gonna be sure that you spend the rest of your life in prison or you end up dead.
And I began to get these documents as the years went on in doing my research. And sure enough, I got a bunch of documents on myself. And then I realized why it was that night that I was arrested, that early morning that I was arrested, why I was almost killed. Because in those documents, the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover himself, had identified me and the rest of us, conspirators and protesters, as subversives. Dangerous, armed subversives. And my God, all we were doing was nonviolent protest.
As schools opened in the fall, the East LA 13 felt the full impact of their indictments.
I walked in this morning and they told me I could not teach, that I would have to go downtown to personnel, that I could not teach.
Who told you
that? The principal.
There was a ruling, part of the education code, that if you are arrested, you cannot be in the classroom. And then because I was indicted, I was an indicted felon, for sure I could not be out in the classroom. So I was going to have problems as far as teaching.
The struggle in the East Los Angeles school system came down to a single defining moment. Students and parents fought to get Sal Castro reinstated.
This was a person who put himself out on the line, and his community came to his support. And at that point, whether you liked him or you didn't like him wasn't even the issue. The issue is that this community, the Chicano community in Los Angeles, had to have a role in what the schools did.
What do you think it will take to get people to pay attention to the demands of the Mexican-American community?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, in looking in retrospect, there were about 15,000 kids out in the streets in that week of March. There were about 16 schools involved, not only senior highs throughout East Los Angeles, but also in West Los Angeles in support of the kids in East LA. There were junior high schools involved. There were about 45 high school students arrested. There were about 25 adults. And, you know, the majority community seemed like was unconcerned, business as usual.
We picketed that high school every day with a contingent of people picketing to call for Sal Castro to be returned to Lincoln. And in between our daily pickets at Lincoln, we also went to the school board meetings, which were on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons, to address them and ask them to return Sal to Lincoln.
It was Zapata who said, "I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees." In front of Lincoln High last week, the crippled and the blind paraded so that you might have eyes to see and courage to stand on your feet and to deal in good faith with the Mexican-American community.
After 10 days of picketing without results, Chicano activists resorted to a new tactic. Instead of walking out, they sat in.
We just said, well, we're not going to leave. And we'll sit here and we'll stay here until you make the decision that our needs of the Chicano community in this city are taken care of. And the community has the right to make decisions about the kinds of people who teach in their schools.
It just seemed like the next logical step, you know, that we had to kind of apply a little bit more pressure. We were determined to occupy that room, and that was our main function. You know, we slept there. We kept that room occupied through that whole period.
I'd never done anything like that before. And it was civil disobedience. And civil disobedience means that you have to take the consequences. So we knew what the stakes were, but we knew we had to do it.
At one point, they turned off the air conditioning. At one point, they turned off the phones. At one point, they turned off the heat. And they did all these interesting things to make us uncomfortable. But there were things you read, a lot of books. We sang. We had mass. It was a time to talk about what we were going to do next. And every day, you know, we thought it was going to end every day. We thought, okay, it'll be over. They're going to listen.
Our people want the school system to respect the integrity, to have respect for the dignity of the person, regardless of his cultural background and regardless of his economic power. We live in a society that respects money. And we in the Mexican community are insisting that the schools learn to respect people.
I still have a very vivid memory of the people sitting on the floor as I walked to my office. I wish I could have had them come into my office or come into the board in executive session and see all of the problems. Then they would understand that we didn't want to do to them what they thought we were doing to them.
After 7 days, the board agreed to vote on Sal Castro's reinstatement. But they demanded that protesters end the sit-in or be arrested.
That last night, the officers came in and made the announcement that they were going to begin arrests. And those of us who didn't want to be arrested had to leave.
35 demonstrators refused to leave.
You are hereby notified that this building will be closed at 10 o'clock p.m. That any permission, implied or otherwise, to remain on these premises is hereby revoked. You will be considered trespassing and in violation of California Penal Code, Section 602N.
It was clear to us that we did not have the power and that they could crush us if they decided to, as certainly they had crushed many other movements.
The next day, as the board prepared to vote, Chicano leaders made a final appeal.
It's not so much, Mr. Castro. It's the issue, what the man means to every teacher. Academic freedom, shall we call it, to a Negro, to a Mexican, to an Anglo, shall we say.
We are here to express to you that in accepting a Mexican teacher who says that it's good to be Mexican, you're also accepting a principle that may govern our city without barbed wire in the middle of the street. For out of one flesh has God made all men.
The Los Angeles School Board began to vote as the community watched.
Roll call, please. Mr. Gardner? Yes. Dr. Hardy?
Yes.
Dr. Nalla? Yes. Dr. Roots? Yes. Dr. Wood?
No.
Reverend Jones? Yes. I move adjourned.
Tell, they called you a troublemaker, a rabble-rouser, and everything else. Are you that?
No, I don't think so. I'm a reformer in education.
What does that mean?
There are many changes that have to be made because at this point, education is not relevant to kids in general and Mexicans in particular.
Sal Castro and the other LA-13 defendants won their battle with the school district, but they still faced the possibility of long prison terms. Their legal battles would continue for 2 more years.
The East LA-13, which was of course the case coming out of the walkouts, was ultimately thrown out of court on appeal, again based on the Bill of Rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to petition the government for redress of grievances.
The walkouts were the first significant urban struggle of the Chicanos. And all that our kids were trying to do was to make the schools work better.
What the walkouts did, it focused the attention now on the Chicanos in the city, because these kids were serious. These kids that went to school from that time, they were going to do something. They were going to change the world.
Los Angeles was only the beginning. Soon after the blowouts, Chicano students across the country staged similar protests, igniting a movement for educational reform that would continue for many years to come.
We were very successful at informing the public about how serious the conditions were. Also in getting our parents and other community people involved.
The blowouts made us all realize that, wow, collectively we had a strong voice, and it gave us a power that we didn't realize that we had before. And we knew that we were going to win, one way or another.
To learn more about the Mexican-American Civil Rights Movement, visit us on the PBS homepage at the address on your screen.
In response to the anger and frustration that had been building for so many years within their community. In California and Texas, they demanded humane treatment in the fields where they labored. In New Mexico, they fought to reclaim land once owned by their ancestors. It became clear that without political power, Mexican Americans would remain second-class citizens.
And we're poor, man. I mean, we're poor. And nobody wants to do nothing about it. You still kissing the Democratic Party, thinking they're gonna save you, and they ain't gonna do it.
In a small South Texas town, a new political party took shape that threatened to change the political landscape of America.
These are Chicano people here. You've never met us. We're not in the dictionary. It's a brand new ball game. You're going to have to relearn all your stereotypes and all your myths because we are about to begin creating new ones, tough ones, and great ones. And I suggest you learn fast if you want to match us.
As the nation watched, Chicanos took on the most challenging quest of the Mexican-American civil rights movement.
Soy de Texas, es mi orgullo ser chicano. En los barrios me pueden encontrar.
In the 1960s, Mexican Americans made up the majority of the population of South Texas. Most were migrant farm workers, poor, with little education. After picking the winter crops, many of them travel across America in search of yet another harvest.
This part of the country has been built on the backs of the Mexican Americans. So you had every bit as much segregation, unequal education, and so forth as the African American did in the Deep South.
The few wealthy landowners were Anglo. The huge majority of the population was locked into a labor pool of just reserve labor. Owners of businesses were all Anglos. I don't recall in the downtown area a single Mexican-American business when I was growing up.
In Crystal City, where Jose Angel Gutierrez grew up in the 1940s and 50s, Mexican Americans accounted for 85% of the population, but they had no political representation. For years, Mexican Americans had been denied the right to vote by obstacles like poll taxes, literacy tests, and gerrymandered voting districts.
You take a county where we might be the majority of the population. Well, what the Anglo establishment had done was to divide the county in such a way that it was simply impossible for Mexican Americans to really gain political power.
We had the poll tax back then. Most people did not have the money, and if they did, they had the sense not to spend it on the privilege of voting, because it was always white candidates, and that was always the results.
The situation was people were, in many cases, denied the right to vote because they didn't speak English. In other cases, they were in sort of peonage to a boss or patron and were required to vote as he wanted them to. He would pay the poll taxes and they would vote for who he said to vote for. So it was really an archaic system.
We did work very hard. All 5 of us went house to house as Knesset.
In 1963, for the first time in more than 100 years, Mexican Americans put up their own candidates for office and challenged Anglo politicians for control of city government.
We had to be ingenious and invented cakewalks and tamale sales and dances where you would pay supposedly for the cake or the tamales or the dance, but end up getting registered to vote.
Although only a student, Gutierrez was active in the campaign, making speeches, registering voters, organizing rallies. The 5 candidates known as Los Cinco surprised political observers by defeating the Anglo mayor and the All-Anglo City Council. The victors quickly learned that long-standing traditions do not change easily. First, Texas Ranger A.Y. Alley refused to turn over the keys to City Hall. A phone call from Texas Governor John Conley forced him to accept the new officials.
We decided we was going to try and put some...
The local business community was more effective in its strategy.
Didn't you lose your job just after the election results were announced?
Yes, sir, I sure did.
You cut your salary then?
In San Jacinto, I'm going on $35 a week. I don't know how long I could have stand it, but I'm doing it right now.
They began trying to indict one of the members of the council for a check that had bounced. They tried to remove 1 or 2 others for being late in payments of utilities. And they ran a slate against us the next time around and beat us.
The rise and fall of Los Cinco echoed a long history of conflict between Mexican Americans and the South Texas power structure.
In the history of oppression of Mexicanos or Chicanos in the United States, Texas was probably the worst. You have more of a history of conflict. You have more of a history of land grabbing, outright land grabbing. You have more of a history of just outright physical oppression of the Mexican population in Texas. In fact, in the 20s, the New York Times had an editorial that's saying that the indiscriminate killing of Mexicans in Texas had reached the proportions of being a scandal.
The Texas Rangers were created in 1823 to protect settlers from outlaws. They had a reputation for intimidation and violence toward Mexican Americans.
I was coming up Military Road with Colonel Hickok, and they came to some big mesquite trees, and there was 4 Mexicans hanging by the neck. The colonel says, "Peavy, I guess the Rangers have been through here."
In the face of this frontier justice, terrorized Mexican Americans were reluctant to fight for their civil rights.
Down there, law enforcement was used for private purposes. They were acting as a private police force for some of those farmers down there, employers down in the valley. This is back in what, 69, 70, somewhere in there. And certainly for the years and years before that, no action was brought against the Rangers. They were just a law unto themselves.
Ranger Alley and the Anglo Council were back in power. It was business as usual in Crystal City.
I never forgot those kinds of dynamics that go on, and from then on became vigilant that it's not just important to take power. You've got to be able to hold power and govern effectively. So I learned by watching.
Jose Angel Gutierrez went on to graduate school at St. Mary's University in San Antonio. There he met Willie Velasquez. Before long, they were working together to bring change to Mexican-American politics.
We had a regular study circle. We'd read about King and we'd go look for him. We traveled Atlanta several times. We'd read about Stokely Carmichael and the SNCC activists, and we'd track them down. We learned about Corky Gonzalez and Reyes Tijerina, and we'd go find them, or Chavez. I mean, we actually read and then went out and got informed firsthand.
Gutierrez wrote his thesis on the conditions for revolution in South Texas.
What he meant by revolution was fundamental change in electoral, economic, and social context. Remember, at this time in South Texas, Mexican Americans were legally barred in many ways from taking part in politics.
Early attempts to organize Mexican Americans began in the 19th century. Some successes came in 1929 with the formation of LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens.
LULAC was very much aware of the oppression which Mexican Americans were experiencing in South Texas. They're very successful in breaking down some discriminatory barriers in the area of education, in the area of employment, in the area of health services.
By the mid-40s, Mexican-American servicemen and women returned from World War II, only to find that discrimination was still part of everyday life. These conditions led to the creation of the American GI Forum.
What galvanized the organization was an incident where a returning war hero was refused burial in his own hometown by the Anglo Mortuary Funeral Home.
Felix Longoria from Three Rivers, Texas, died a hero during the liberation of the Philippines.
The idea that a hero could not be buried in his own hometown angered people so much that it really symbolized a lot of the concern, the grievances that these Latino servicemen had.
The GI Forum sent a telegram to then Senator Lyndon Johnson. He intervened, arranging for Longoria to be buried with honors at Arlington National Cemetery. Many Mexican Americans remembered Johnson's support at election time.
I ask your help in this campaign.
In 1960, John F. Kennedy's presidential campaign recognized the potential power of groups like LULAC and the GI Forum and solicited Mexican American voters.
John F. Kennedy, candidato demócrata a la presidencia, quiere combatir estos males. Es el único candidato que se preocupa.
Kennedy was an extremely popular